I
Thula Mkhize,
commit to bring
Commit,
no harm
bring no harm to any woman.
No woman should
No
ever
one should
have
ever have
unsafe around me.
around me.
I promise
I promise
to
to call out
and hold men
and hold the men around me accountable for their
accountable
decisions
for
and
their
actions.
decisions and actions.
I acknowledge the broken state we're in and are committed to change.
Yeah.
I'm committed to change. I had to do it last. I had to do it last. Sorry.
We are about to have a very difficult conversation. I think over the last couple of weeks, for everyone that's watching at home, we've had different conversations with different people that are in our lives, just thinking about what it is that we can say or do around what's currently happening in our country to the women and the children. And we just thought, you know what? Let's just all get together and have a conversation. How that conversation unfolds, no one actually knows, because we do not know. We don't have the answers. But I think we've done good stories long enough that if we engage and we engage and we engage some more and we engage some more, something changes, someone changes, and we get to a point where it all makes sense.
Yeah. I think for me, what's kind of been, I guess, a point that almost gets to me is the fact that we can't pin it down. In my head, I can't pin it down and say men kill and rape because of these reasons, you know? And it bothers me, the fact that, and I think, like you've mentioned, with good stories before, so we've done that long enough and we've experienced people long enough to sort of know that when someone is going through A, B, C, and D, the source is C, F, and Z.
Or we know what the resolve is, you know?
Yes. With this,
excuse me, but I'm singing frogs in my throat.
Yeah, with this, we don't know what's going on. And I think some people have maybe taken the silence from some men and most men as maybe a sign that maybe we don't care. But to be honest, we just don't know what to do. We don't know what to say.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's just that it sometimes lama conversations that we have as amachita, it's not something that you can broadcast to the world as it happens. But I really
we've had tons of these conversations, and amongst our friends. So in this conversation that we're having today, we've got a couple of some of our friends that are in the Good Stories Executive Committee. So we just decided, let's bring some men together and just exchange thoughts, and maybe we'll just figure something out. If we don't figure anything out, maybe, just maybe, then we'll have a conversation and we'll just learn from each other. And I think I don't want people to sort of feel like we are right, because we're not. We're probably wrong in our exchange, and we're probably wrong in how we're trying to resolve this situation. And maybe comment and tell us how we're supposed to do this. Maybe comment below and tell us what are the topics and how we should handle this conversation going forward, because as Reggie had mentioned, that these are conversations that should happen weekly, maybe bi-monthly. So yeah, maybe just let us know what conversations you want us to cover, and then we'll take it from there.
So and everyone that's at home watching, you'll forgive me. I'm not very active in the conversation. Had a bit of a crisis that I needed to handle, and then I had to cook for the family.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a crisis. It's like this is deceitful. Wow.
Yeah. All right. All right. Let's start the conversation.
Peace, man. Case. So, gents, I think we're all aware of the issues that we have in our country right now in terms of gender-based violence and femicide. So, obviously, I think I'm not very educated when it comes to the distinction between all of these things. So, and I think all of us will agree that we all contribute in this. We've all contributed as men in the space that we're in, and there's a certain conversation that our women are expecting us to have, and I think this is the start of those things. So, can I just maybe have quickly? I think all of us that are here right now, can you all maybe quickly give an idea of what we think is going on and what our thoughts are, and then we can jump into the conversation. Because I think at the end of the day, I don't know if we'll find a solution here, but I think we might share enough with each other to find a space where we can reach some sort of understanding of the space we're in.
Ntokozo, maybe it might be just worthwhile to just highlight as well what we are looking to achieve out of today's session in particular. Maybe just around the theme we'd like to unpack today is masculinity and what it means for everyone. And maybe just a couple of the sub-questions that we can discuss. Because I think, to my mind, this conversation represents the start of a series of conversations we're going to have about what it means to be indoda and a man in this society, in this country, during the times we're living in. For me, and I think it's probably going to mean different things to different people, and I'll try and answer it in the context of what you've asked us to do, which is to try and make sense of what we think is happening in society right now, right?
Yeah.
And my sense is masculinity is about all things that make a man a man. It could be your genetics, okay, sure. It could be your genetics that make you male versus female. But now, in the context of what's happening in society, how are people viewing their gender, really? And what it means for how they interface with their female partners in particular? And what I'm seeing in society, and this is in part what Tukabazela was saying about the other WhatsApp group, is I'm seeing a couple of things. One, women are tired. Women are tired of having to explain why they need men to stop beating them, stop abusing them, stop killing them, stop raping them. They're tired. And I think the movement that started in the US around Black Lives Matter and has spilled over to South Africa and various parts of the world in various forms, where in South Africa I think the specifics are around gender-based violence, is to say we acknowledge that not all men are rapists, not all men kill their women, but men aren't doing enough to help us against the men who are. And I think the first part of this conversation for me is to just, as Amachid, and I like the way Kabazela put it, acknowledge that we are part of the problem, either in how we abuse the women in our lives in various ways, or how we stop and do not hold each other accountable when another guy does. And maybe when we do, it's also in a destructive and violent manner, which then kind of normalizes the actions of violence in our society. So what I'm hoping this series of conversation acknowledges is one, that every guy is guilty in some way, shape, or form, but that we can change, and that it's upon us to fix our portion of the problem, which is why I think it's true to say we are part of the problem. Not that we are the total problem, but we are definitely part of it. And what can and what should we do to fix our part of the problem?
Yeah.
All right, gents. And let me just say something there. And, I don't know a single person who perpetuates gender-based violence. I don't know a single person who's abusive violently to women, okay? And I say violently because there are different types of abuse. Some might not be violent, but they are abuse nonetheless, right? So how do you make one accountable if you don't know that person? And how do you make yourself accountable for something that you don't know nothing about?
Yeah, look, I think let's take a couple of steps back, guys. And for me, the first thing is, like most crimes, or particularly social crimes, nobody knows the perpetrator, everybody knows the victim. If you ask white people about apartheid, they will tell you that nobody ever knew what was going on.
Yeah.
Because that is how society sees social crimes. The same goes with gender-based violence. The reality is that it happens most of the time in closed spaces, in private spaces. Nobody knows about it most of the time until it has become too big to hide and somebody's dead or something like that has happened. So I think the role of conversations like this is not so much to correct each other from doing it, but to address it before it happens. Is to start a conversation around us as men and say, look, how do we stop this from ever happening to you, to me, to everybody, and spread this conversation in all our circles? I might not know somebody that has done it or that practices it, but the more I speak about it to everybody that I have access to, I am simply I might actually change somebody from starting that culture in the future.
Yeah. So I think, and I mean, we've seen this a lot in spaces where women are saying, how come I know at least one woman who's been raped? How come I know one woman who's been abused? And men don't know a single person who rapes and abuses. The problem there starts with this. You see, the victim will speak out and say, I was raped. The rapist is not going to come to the boys and say, Machita, I raped last night, right? Point number two is, whether we like it or not, there are certain things that we do to abantu besifazane that they deem a problem that we think is okay. Case in point of a situation where a girl says, no, I don't want to have sex. But when you push, eventually she eventually says, okay, fine, let's do it. Ne? In your mind, because the world has taught us, or experience has taught us that girls do say no and eventually say yes, when are you thinking, I got laid? In her eyes, you forced me to do this, hence you raped me. So there's really I mean, even if some of us, the things that we don't think are rape, that we don't think are abuse, the person receiving it is just like, dude, you're abusing me. This is, I mean, catcalling. You know, it's the little things that, so it's not always the big things. It's sometimes the you know, the small things that we do and say that we think are harmless, but that do damage to women.
I just want us to start now by identifying that there are certain elements in our behavior, in our core as men, and what is acceptable to us as amachita, as you say, but it is not acceptable by abantu besifazane. Like
issues are in our day and ages. We are modern men, and then we are still halfway or half in the past. Like in the zelobol.
Okay.
It starts there where you start objectifying umuntu wesifazane and make that person an object. Cause when baklabe 70,000 or 80,000, and you feel like niggas on controlling mele enze 1, 2, and 3. So that's where it starts. So the process the uncles need to shift the dynamics of ilobolo as the merge of two families, not you purchasing. So to me these days it's a purchase order. So mang abide by whatever I say. If not, that's where this thing starts. And
I think it's very dangerous to say. I think it's very dangerous to say what you're saying. When we talking about like it doesn't sit well, because there's a lot of us who don't deem culture to be that. We don't view women as our items after we've paid lobola. Some of us actually, yeah.
If all 8 or 10 of us here can be able to say, if you are accused of something, we must make sure that we hold you accountable, whether it's through ensuring that you prove your innocence. But we must not at any stage hurt the victim while trying to protect you. We must help you through it and make sure that you are accountable for it. The biggest example is the biggest example. Some people might not like it, was when DJ Cleo went to visit Ubrix.
Yeah.
And he got in trouble because when he went to visit him, they said, "Oh, you are on his side." And his response was, "Look, he is in jail and he's paying for what he did. But as his boy, I'm helping you get through it because he has to pay for what he did. But it doesn't mean I have to throw him away." So the whole concept of accountability is us saying, you were wrong. And not end up in a situation where, and I'm saying you were wrong in a situation where it's now clear that it's done and all that. But in fact, even before that, we need to be able to say, speak, what did you do?
Yeah. Is there a way though?
Yeah.
And I see us holding each other accountable, and I hear everybody. Is there a way though that we could stop it from happening? Because I think that's the win, where it's not just Uti, sharp, Jabu, you did it, you messed up, now own up to it, because it's a woman's life that could be lost, because I think we're dealing with two things here, right?
Sorry, Kabazel, do you mind if I interject with you? Sorry to cut you off. And I think Ukulu's right in that the one of the positives of today is that we've actually started speaking, which is awesome. But I do think that, in our WhatsApp group, we've debated at length what we would like to get out of these discussions.
Yes.
And I'd just like us to have a little bit of structure around it so that the conversation can build. At the moment, I feel as if we're going in too many different directions, and we run the risk that we're not going to actually delve deep into the various layers of the onion, so to say, right? And I think for today's topic, I would really like us to focus in on what does it mean to be indoda in our society? What do we understand that to mean? I think Usvio was trying to touch on it from the perspective of Ilobol and culture. That's his perspective. And I think we need to allow that to be aired. And Ukulu was right in challenging a view that he disagrees with, right? But I think we need to delve into that, because I think, to my mind, that amongst a whole host of other things, are topics we need to systemically and practically go through and deliberately go through each one in each conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that will then allow us to quote unquote again, to dig deep into each of the issues. So for today, if maybe we can just all go through the call once and just be like, what does it mean for you? If someone says uyindoda, what does that mean? Because I think a lot of what we are seeing as outcomes that are violent, to me, stem from people believing they are being treated lesser than. They're being emasculated in some way. So maybe if we can identify what it is, what it means for us to be indoda, we might then be able to start solving one of our potential triggers and maybe communicate it to a partner who is emasculating us in some way.
Okay. I think bengicela ukufaka nje on the spot. I want you to, if you can, kick us off with the definition of a man. What does it mean for you? And what is your understanding what it means to be a real man in society in this day and age, in 2020, in COVID-19? What does it mean to be a man?
Hey, Mkhize, this is a difficult one, eh?
Yeah.
But let me kick it off. I say it's difficult because it's always contextual.
Okay.
But let me at least get the conversation going. For me, a man, being a man, means one, it means somebody who is responsible, both for their own actions as well as the interest of the people that are attached to them in one way or the other. Okay. But it starts with somebody who is responsible for their own actions. Somebody who can take accountability for their actions. Two, being a man, for me, means somebody who has an outlook about not just where they are right now, but about the future as well. Once again, not just for himself, but for others. And then thirdly, it means somebody who creates a space for self-expression for others, particularly a man in a context of having children or having a family, somebody who creates a space for others to grow and to express themselves. That to me is how I define being a man.
I feel like we're done here. Goodbye, everybody. Okay. Anyone else?
Can I go? Can
Yes,
I have a go?
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks. I'm Joe, for everyone who doesn't know me. So I have a very interesting background about where do I derive this definition of what a man is. And interestingly, it comes from when I was young and I was a Christian, a born-again Christian. But we were made to appreciate that God, cares for us. God looks after us. God what's best for us. And God has love. And God does not destroy, but he protects, he secures, he cares. And that's what should be the definition of what we look at as a father, somebody who cares, somebody who understands, somebody who empathizes, somebody who takes responsibility, as Baba was saying, not only for those who look up to them, but takes responsibility for decisions that he makes and acts responsible in society. And
did articulate it, gosh. We are responsible. We need to be a responsible people. But Nzakala Ushon is saying that fathers, but the definition of a man I don't know, or of a father I don't know, because we had missing father figures, not by choice. They had to leave, and then they had to go to mines to fend.
Exactly.
How I define a father, how I define a man is, you come home, I ask for something, you give it a monetary value, and then that's it. That's how I define a man. But now, Tina, what closer when we you rites of passage, that's when you become a man. So some people are not identified as men because they have not gone through that route of circumcision and given the rites of passage. So it is blurred definition of men. We don't know where the bar is. As we go, we are trying to take from this, take from that, and we evolve and say, okay, I think this is a definition of a man, and we lose it somehow. Subconsciously, we take things from a lot of people, and those things now they end up complicating us. Where do I take? Where do I go? What do I do? And then we start being frustrated. We just explode because we were never taught by our fathers how to communicate. How do you become those kind of things?
I think what's important for me when as a viewer is I think it becomes very easy for everybody in this day and age to, I mean, all of us here as Badala, we are above the age of 25, most of us in the early 30s or mid 30s. I think it is paramount for us to start moving away from almost, I don't want to say excuses because these are valid issues, right? The question was, what should the man be now? Like, what do you think? Because now for us to try and go back and say, Ubaba from, actions from back in the day, I'm not minimizing them, but I'm saying we need to get to a point where we now old enough to define for ourselves. It's important for us to make those decisions for us now and be strong on them to say, this is what I think a man should do, right? Because for me, I want to define it to say, Guti, a real man in 2020 is a man that takes responsibility for his actions. I cannot do things now as a 35-year-old man and say, I am doing them because my father was not there. I cannot be raping amantombazane, being shy intombazane kaya. And for me, when we're speaking of these issues of inking as a semakhaya and abantu besifazane, I see there's almost two things. There is domestic violence, right? And then there's also just femicide, like intombazane ibulayo post office. Like yenzeni, lo muntu loyo obula intombazane post office yini lemngene ekhanda. He can't say my dad wasn't there. We can't use that anymore. We can't. Yeah. The time's gone. If I was 15 years old, maybe I was 20 years old, sure I can go there. I can't go there now. I can't.
But Thula, can I? Okay.
Ntokozo, if I can. Yes. Because I think I'd just like to build another club I said, and I think if there is a word that I learned from there is responsibility. So, and taking responsibility it's an all-encompassing phrase. For me, the word that rings true of indoda and what it means for me is to be a provider. That's what I associate with masculinity or obdot. And what I mean by that is I associate provision financially and all the benefits that accrue from that. So home, food, shelter, however you want to, education, whatever finances help a family accrue. That's what I associate with indot. I'm learning that there's more to it than that. I'm learning that indot also has to provide emotional support and encourage those around him, family and friends, to be the best version of themselves, right? So be the platform that people can come to you with ideas, with insecurities, with thoughts, where they want to interact with you at an intellectual level or an emotional level, that is indoda. And a third piece is security. I believe indoda should be the guy who can protect his family,
yes,
and
sir,
protect his friends. And I liked what Thami said in the earlier call. Protecting your friends also means protecting them when they are at their lowest or at their worst. You know, if you still call umuntu umngani, there must be umngani, whether they are thriving or whether they are struggling. That's indoor. There can't be seasonality in your friendship. What I'm struggling with around ubdot and masculinity is this word I'm hearing a lot lately, and it's vulnerability. Because to me, it sounds like some form of weakness, right? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe guys see it in a different way. This is just something that I didn't grow up associating with masculinity. And I'm not sure how to ask for help. I struggle to ask for help. It doesn't matter what that help looks like. Because I always think, as in that, I need to figure stuff out. Yeah, that's my truth.
What Reggie is saying is how most men feel.
yes,
And what most men want to see happen. But the landscape has shifted.
It's changed.
You know, it's changed to a point where women are saying, "Gucci, no, dude, like I can buy my own Beamer, I can buy my own Mercedes, I can provide for the entire household without your salary." Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you can't now look at yourself as the provider. When shit, some of our women pay their own lobola. They give us money under carpet for us to pay for the lobola. Do you know what I'm saying? So where are we putting that in this conversation?
And Kuli, you're right. But that's why I also said the word that comes to mind for me around masculinity is provider. And I started at the top with financial provision.
Yeah.
And then I went through and I said emotional provision. And I think for most of us, that's probably where we fall short.
Yeah.
Right? Or because the others are so tangible. I mean, you buy a house for your family. Every day, umuntu mengene endlini, mele babonga ubaba for the house, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas emotional support is something that's a bit different, you know? So if your partner's struggling with her career, with her weight, with a family issue, that's different. You can't take that and hold it and touch it and say, "There, I'm supporting you in that." And because it's so abstract, it becomes very difficult for me, and I acknowledge that. But I say indoda has to aspire to be able to support emotionally. Indoda has to be able to provide security. You know, how many guys here, when you're lying in bed with your partner at night and you hear a sound, does your woman get up and say, "No, baby, lalang, so check out what's happening over there"? Honestly. Maybe guys do. And this is a safe space for guys to say that. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, and then you wake up the next day, you tell us that as gents.
As guys. And own it.
And worse you are.
And own it. And say, "No, guys, Mina, when there's a funny sound at night in my home, my wife goes to check it. Mina, I call ADT." You know?
Like, yeah, nkosikazi ungitshele kwenzakalani uzomthola la.
Yeah. Sure, guys.
And Ntokozo.
Yes, sir.
I think, Sis has touched on something very interesting. And maybe let me pose it as a question. When our own notions of masculinity are challenged, how does that make us feel and how do we react to that? When my wife has a larger income than mine and she is able to provide without my salary, How does that make me feel? And what other alternatives do I use to assert my masculinity when it's challenged? Because I think right there lies some of the problems that we are dealing with.
Yeah. And obviously, so I'll give you a very personal story in response to that, because I literally was about to make the same point. I grew up in a household where my mom's a nurse, my dad is a truck driver. My mom obviously pretty much made more money than my dad, so she bought the house, right? And so he lived in her house. So, and you could see how he just felt like he wasn't a man. And you find in many situations where a man cannot be a man because of provision, accountability, responsibility, being a father, and protection. He then wants to become a man physically because there's no way you can beat me there. And I think that those things happen where amadoda amaningi wanna exert their manhood because that's how I can do it, because everywhere else I lose.
Sorry, in some instances, some people would look at that as motivation. Maybe I need to step up. And we hope that everyone looks at it that way. Yeah. Reggie says maybe emotionally, maybe that top layer of financially and materially. We hope that everyone would look at it that way and say, maybe I need to step up, and then tick boxes and say, maybe emotionally, I can now look at it and say, I'm going to stand behind her and say, go, baby, go. You know, and then hopefully she'll buy me a BMW after that. Hopefully she'll be very happy that I am there being supported. But that's just, I'm not saying far-fetched, but that's a new territory for us.
For me, it's very important for me right now. And I think all of us, I think women no longer feel safe around us. Women no longer trust us. And I think we need to find ways to restore that trust. We need to find ways to, especially because, and I think the death of umuntu wesifazane oyi-one is one guy out of hundreds and hundreds of good dudes. But that one guy is fucked up enough to almost justify exactly how the women are feeling. So I think it's important for us to find ways to restore trust, because I think that's what a man does. It's when things are broken, we try and fix things, even though we mustn't try and fix things all the time. Sometimes we just need to listen. And I think I've listened enough to realize that some of the things that our women want now is just to know that they are safe around us. Just safety.
So my takeaway, or how it lands on me, is I think knowing which platform where other people or other men are experiencing the same thing that I am experiencing makes it easy for me then to take it home and try and unpack it like Mankulman Fro and say, you asked me to show emotion. Before this platform, I would think I'm the only one that's going through that. And so I'd bottle it up and then ipume however it comes out as abusive, whether emotionally or otherwise. But knowing that there's other guys, I'm not the only one who's going through it, makes it easy for me then to start conversations either with you guys before I can take it home. And that's what I think it means for me to be a man today, is to tap into those fears, those uncharted territories where I have to become emotional, I have to become vulnerable, I have to become as much as I want to provide and protect and to do all of those things, to be responsible enough to say when I fall short, to when finances are not what they should be, I need to know that I can have that conversation in a partner. Whereas in times past, it was difficult because, again, I thought, what are other men going to think about me? I think that would be my takeaway from the statement. I think, how does that make me feel when that lands on me? But knowing that there's other guys,
I think
bring no harm to any woman.
No woman should ever have
around me.
I promise to call out and hold the men
around me accountable for their decisions and actions. I acknowledge the broken state and are committed to changing.
Yeah.
I'm committed to change. Noise. I had to do it last. I had to do it last.
There's always that one guy in the end is like committed to change.